All right. Well, I think we've got quorum here, so let's kick this off. Folks, just make sure you're at the right place. You are here for the Parade and Highway webinar, partnering up to reduce fraud and secure freight bookings. Let's meet our speakers today. I'm Lindsay Watt. I'm the VP of Product at Parade. I've been with Parade for about 3 years, been the brokerage in the freight industry for about 9. A lot of my experience has been building early stage technology, and my job at Parade is to figure out how do we help folks buy and sell freight better? What are the products we need to do? What are the partnerships we need? How do we actually work with great companies like Highway to make sure that you have access to the best tools and all the investments you make in freight tech work in order to help your brokerage be more profitable and make more money? So that's a bit of background on me. Brennan, why don't you tell us kind of who you are?
Yeah, thank you so much, Lindsay, and thank you, Parade, for hosting. I'm excited to get to present today and visit with you. My name is Brennan Bailey, and I'm our Chief Product Officer, and have gotten the privilege of serving in this position since our origins last year. We call ourselves a carrier identity provider for brokers, and I'm really excited about this partnership. This partnership is an expression of our founding vision, which is to help brokers identify who's really hauling their freight. And yeah, so we're excited to bring an extra layer of security to bookings that are currently being made by our mutual customers in Parade. Thanks, Lindsay.
Awesome. So quick overview of Parade. Some of you know us, some of you don't. We are a platform and capacity management. What that means is we help folks buy and sell freight better. If we focus in on the carrier sales side of a brokerage, what do we actually deliver? If you're using someone like Parade, what are the outcomes you're going to get? Well, you're going to see 30% more of your loads booked on average. So you're going to do a lot more freight per person. You're going to drive a lot more carrier reuse, right? 25% more of it. You're going to see that you're going to build your carrier network at the same time. And all that carrier reuse is actually going to help you drive more margin as well. So not only do you make more money by booking more loads, you also make more money per load through what you do. And so we're happy to talk more about that. You can see some of the companies that we work with down below, industry leaders like ARL and Steamboat. We've been around for several years doing this. And today, what we're going to focus on is talking a little bit about Highway. So do you want to tell us a bit about Highway, Brennan? Give us a quick overview, but have a little more detail.
Yes, yeah. So what we believe at Highway is that the identity of a carrier means so much more than showing up with a certificate of insurance and a DOT number and asking to haul your freight. We think it's so much more, and so what we're doing is bringing a lot of the principles that all of us have become familiar with as consumers of banks and other digital experiences that each of us interact with every day on our smartphones into freight brokerage. And that begins with things as simple as multi-factor authentication to something as advanced as VIN intelligence, where we painstakingly go and identify each and every power unit that's actually insured by a carrier, so that somebody who is reporting to have 10 power units on their MCS 150 filed with the FMCSA every couple of years is kind of held to the fire whenever we can identify, hey, brother, you've really only got 2 trucks insured, and we know that, and that means you're really capable of only hauling 2 loads, not the 5 they're asking for. And so our hope is that we can bring an extra layer of security through an identity management service to each of our brokers.
Perfect. Maybe we can talk briefly about how Parade plus Highway kind of are a 1+1+3 for our mutual customers. And I can kick it off and take a stab, and then Brad, I'd love to have you kind of weigh in a little bit. So at Parade, one of the ways that we help you drive that profitability in your business, drive more loads per day, is by bringing you a fire hose of digital quotes and a fire hose of digital bookings. And it's important that when you're doing quotes or doing bookings, that you're doing it with carriers that you can trust, right? And so by enabling you to pull world-class identity services from Highway into Parade, you can have the benefits of automation while also scaling the trust. And so that's what we're here to talk about today, is how can you don't have to make we think it's a false choice for brokerage. You just have to say, hey, you know what? I want to do more digital bookings or do more digital freight, but it might be a risk of trust. Or we get a bad carrier in, or you know what? I can verify every single carrier through the world's the best identity service providers like Highway. but I can't get automation. That's a false choice. And today with Highway, we're enabling you to truly get the best of both worlds. Get the digital transactions you're looking for, but combine them by making sure you're working with the best set of qualified carriers for your particular network.
Yeah, I'm gonna expand on that same point, and I've got a figure I want to share that some of you may have heard me publicly advertise. One thing we'll talk about frequently here is in the last week alone, just in the last 7 days, more than 200 users from more than 30 different countries have come to Highway claiming to represent a carrier, but unable to prove it. And so I think when Lindsay talks about false choices, he's exactly right. What all of us, I think, have traditionally been presented with is these false choices between, speed, like he's talking about in digital bookings, and security, and also scale, I think. And I do think you've got the option to work with a provider like Highway in order to establish security, but without Parade, you don't have the speed and the frictionless bookings that improve the return that you get on your investments across your carrier team. Or if you have Parade without an identity provider like Highway, you can have less friction, but open yourself up to more exposure with respect to who's asking to haul your freight. And once again, I think all of these are principles that each of us enjoy in other industries. I think of that same false choice that we don't face every time we interact with our smartphones. I always use this example. I'll pull up my smartphone and say, hey, there's all kinds of digital experiences this opens up, but that experience is encumbered if I can't get identity right, or if it takes me a long time to establish my identity. When in reality, I can authenticate into my phone, and there it was. I mean, that was it right there. I've both authenticated who I am, and I've authorized that I am allowed to gain access to this device. And once I've proven my identity, I now have access to frictionless experiences like a carrier should in Parade, just because I've been able to do that so fast. And I think it's also important to do that at scale. If we think of large banks, I mean, if you think of going to get a mortgage, I just did this with my family recently. Going to get a mortgage, I'm pre-qualified before I'm ever even allowed to ask for a mortgage, right? I think oftentimes we forget when interacting with large organizations like that, they're going to ask you, hey, what's your income? And if my income isn't satisfactory or doesn't meet the qualifications of who they're going to be allowed to give a loan to, or who you're allowed to give freight to, I'm not even going to get to talk to you on the phone, nor should you have to face, a bid from a carrier who doesn't meet your qualifications. And so, what we're excited about is applying those same principles into a frictionless digital experience, like Parade offers.
Nice. I think you make a really good point there, which is there's some very powerful trends that have happened in other industries that are being brought into freight over the last 5 years, right? And so one of the areas, as we were talking before this, Parade, we're very focused on the enabling frictionless transactions and figuring out how do you scale the brokerage to do much more per day, right? And so things like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, it would have been wild to think that a carrier could just click a buy now button. But if you've got a trusted carrier, you can buy the load now, right? And it's starting to happen the same on the shipper side. And so we're very focused on bringing some of those frictionless digital experiences in. And I think one of the areas we were talking about is, there's been this huge effort in industries outside of freight to really know your customer, right? And that some of the things you folks are doing at Highway and some of the work you're doing is kind of bringing some of these best practices into freight so that you can have the combination of trust and scale and friction free happening at the same time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Our founding vision was to identify who's really hauling your freight, right? We say it all starts with carrier identity. And that came from our founder and CEO, Jordan Graff's experience, first on Wall Street, performing KYC processes on behalf of JP Morgan. And then at TriumphPay, where he was responsible for making payments on behalf of freight brokers. And what Jordan was doing as an engineer was sitting at TriumphPay looking at user data, identity data, and looking at payment data. And his only choice in that seat was to make the payment to the carrier, right? There was no other option, in that particular seat. But what he did study was the problem, and tried to identify, hey, where does this get solved? Where in the life cycle of this load does this need to be solved? And he kept going upstream of that payment that needed to be made. And where he landed was in the very, very beginning, which was when the relationship between the carrier and the broker was initiated. And we call that identity. And I think oftentimes, that carrier coming across a load that is being offered up digitally by Parade is exactly where that moment occurred. It's exactly where that moment occurs, today for so many carriers. And so where Highway can help mediate trust in that particular digital transaction, again, is such a sweet expression of exactly who we want to be, with Parade and for our brokers. And so I think that's one reason we're so excited about this partnership is it's such a soft, landing spot for our product and the kind of infrastructure and trust, that we want to bake into all of the processes and the technologies that are used by our customers.
Cool. Perfect. But hey, tell us a little bit more about Highway, because there's some great stats here about the breadth of your network.
Yeah, that's kind, Lindsay. Thanks for offering that opportunity. This slide would have looked so different 18 months ago. It would have looked vastly different 18 months ago. And so we feel so humbled by the trust that's been put into us by now more than 375 brokers. We know this is an industry of urgency. It's an industry of urgency. And so the number of certificates of insurance you have on file matters a lot. We know that. We know that's table stakes for many of our customers and many of our prospective customers, is that onboarding will happen quickly. And it needs to be measured in a matter of minutes or even seconds sometimes. And we also know how compromised some underlying data is that all of us have historically used to verify the identity of a carrier. And I think one really important figure there is what you see in the bottom left, which is a figure where we talk about our dependence or our reliance on FMCSA data. I think what all of us have often done, in fact, the very best trainings would say that, hey, in order to know that you're talking to an authorized representative of the carrier, you need to go and ensure that the phone number of the person you're talking to, or the email address, or maybe domain of the person you're emailing with, is a match to the phone number or email address filed with this carrier with the FMCSA. And that was the best practice. And we wake up, all of us, I think, in a world 12 months, 18 months later, where that data has been compromised, significantly compromised, and it can no longer be used as a measure of identity. And so we're very proud that, among the thousands of connections that are being initiated each and every day between a broker and between a carrier, less than 5% of those connections are dependent on that data. They're increasingly less dependent on that data. And this is just because carriers are coming in and claiming their identity and then get to take ownership of who is allowed to manage that account. And so I think the size and the scale of what we've been able to achieve over a certain period of time has been really exciting. But we're very humbled by it, and we consider it a huge responsibility to steward, the trust that's been given to us by so many brokers.
I love it. I love the fact you guys are using a lot of different ways to identify who you should really trust, right? And there's no dependency on one particular source. So maybe for folks on the phone, we can paint a picture of, okay, you've made an investment in Highway as your identity provider. You feel secure in your network. How does all this translate into more scale at your brokerage, right? And so if I can for a minute or two, let me just talk a bit about Parade for the folks on the phone. So at Parade, what we're going to do in order to help you is we are going to say, how can we take your freight and get it to all the different places where carriers book, right? And so we're going to help you push it to your core carriers, whether they're on load boards, whether they're communicating via email, whether they go via a private portal for yourself. The point is, we want to get your freight to the appropriate far corners of the world where carriers can see it and then act on it. And when they act on it, there's sort of two things that a carrier can do. Number one, you can quote a load, right? And the second one is, if you're permitted to, if you're a trusted carrier, you can digitally book. And every time we get a quote or we get a digital booking for you, what we want to do is we want to go back to your identity provider and be able to say, hey, is this someone we can trust, right? And is this someone who can work with you? Because if you get a quote, it's from a carrier who's at a network and they've been in business for 2 months, and your team can't work with them, you should never see that quote. It's nice that they gave you that quote, but the reality is you can't work with them. The policy of your brokerage is that this is just too risky an individual to go with. So we just want to hide that quote permanently from your team, right? Conversely, if a good quote does come in, we want to make sure, is this quote actually coming from someone you can trust who actually is permitted to represent this carrier, right? Is this carrier still in good standing with you, or has their insurance lapsed, or is there something they've done that says, hey, this was a good carrier, but they're not? And that's where, by doing this, by piping in Highway's APIs and all the data they're collecting and all the rich data you're seeing on the screen there, that's how we can make this happen. And that's how your brokerage goes from doing 10 loads per person a day to 15 to 20 to 30. And that's how your gross margins go from 14 to 16%. And that compounds together and does wonderful, wonderful things. So Brandon, let me push it back to you. What else do you think we should be chatting about for folks on the today on the phone?
Yeah. I mean, I think I just want to I think in a market that's so fragmented and where there are so many fantastic technology vendors that brokers can choose from, one thing I want to express to folks here is how important it is to us fundamentally to meet brokers where they are. And the basis for this partnership in many ways came from customers coming to both of us going, hey, I'm in Parade. And we've had new customers who've joined Highway who are on Parade and coming and saying, hey, I've got the ability to operate at tremendous scale. To look at, Chris has asked a question which says, hey, am I going to book more freight or just more secure freight? What I would say is, hey, Parade's going to help you book more freight, and Highway wants to make it more secure. And so we had customers saying, hey, I've got Parade, which is helping me to book more, but I've also got Highway, which is supposed to make it secure, and yet I'm looking at two screens. Why do I have to look at two screens in order to make that happen? And so one thing I want to express, the folks here is it's so important to us to meet our customers where they are. And the answer to that question is they're in Parade. And so that is one objective we have in this partnership is to meet you where you already are. We want to be consistent in doing that across, lots of different partners. But that formed the basis too for why we're meeting today and why we've announced this partnership.
Awesome. Another question here about how does, and maybe you can help with this, Brian, too. How do you see this partnership helping my brokerage work better in today's freight market? The market's it's a challenge. It's not as good as it was a few years ago. How do you think about it?
Yeah, I think oftentimes all of us are guilty of making investments in new technology and not taking the necessary action or performing the necessary effort to get the greatest return on that investment. And I think Lindsay and I think perhaps many people here, that point may resonate. I would say to the folks here, Parade offers so many capabilities. And I think that the security Highway is here to provide is a layer of security we want to extend to each of those capabilities, to all areas of those capabilities, whether you're sourcing for carriers from Parade or if you want to do that in Highway, but then also once you're kind of vetting inbound, bids that carriers are making. And so, I think my plea with the folks here would be to make sure that you're getting the most out of your investments in both Parade and Highway. And I would start there. Before you're thinking about, hey, what's coming next or what else are you going to unveil or announce as a part of this partnership? There will be more. But I always want to make a plea to people who are already invested to make sure that you're getting the most.
Perfect. And that lends itself nicely.
I'm looking at Tyler's question here. Tyler asks, we currently have a Highway subscription, but we don't use Highway for carrier onboarding because we're not onboarded, because we're not integrated yet, and yet are integrated with Parade. Will we be able to leverage the benefits of this partnership? Tyler, I do think that there is a kind of rudimentary benefit that would be provided by this partnership to you, but that will be much more fully realized once you're integrated. You know, what we're going to be able to show you in Parade is whether or not a carrier needs to onboard to you. But in that kind of interim state that you're in right now, you will still be able to see, you know, whether or not a carrier passes one or more of your classifications in highway, which I assume you may have already defined with our implementations team. I probably still sit back and say, man, I'm eager to get you integrated. You know, that's
And
when it's going to
Tyler,
really
we'll
come to
make sure to
life.
follow up with you after the call too. That's the nice thing about these things. We can follow up. We got another question from Chris. He's talking about how do you what is the sort of digital activity that you're going to get through a product like Braid? So let me talk about both where the digital activity is going to come from, and then I think you'll start to understand why we get so excited about you having it integrated with a identity provider like Highway. So at Parade, there's a bunch of different ways you can get freight from carriers, right? One is we're going to send a lot of email on your behalf. We're going to go and email the trusted carriers you're working with and let them know about personalized loads that are available for you. If you've got a carrier who's always running up and down the West Coast, we're going to recommend loads up and down the West Coast. We're not going to tell them about the latest loads out of Chicago going to Pennsylvania because they're irrelevant to them. So you're going to get digital activity from emails, personalized emails that are sent to your existing carrier base and just to your existing carrier base. Second thing you're going to do is we at Parade, we give you a private portal. This is essentially your own load board. It's a website that you can start sending your best carriers to and start saying, hey, you have exclusive access to my freight here. You can go book it. You can go do it there. And then the third thing where we're going to get you digital activity is we have gone out and we've integrated with 16 different load boards or places where carriers find work. Some of these are the very incumbent large boards like DAT or Truck Stop. Some of them are some of the more up and coming ones like Truck Smarter, Motive, all the different places where carriers find work. And so the key thing here is at those different places, they're going to start quoting you and they're going to be able to, if you permit them, digitally book. And because your freight is now going out across the internet to lots and lots of different places, it's critical that we give you the ability to make sure that every time you get a signal back in the form of a quote or a digital booking, that it's from a trusted party, right? Because at the end of the day, everybody wants to get their freight in front of good carriers everywhere. And unfortunately, some of the places where good carriers live may also have a few bad carriers. And there are very few bad carriers out there, but it's critical that you're protected from those because, you know, a little bit of fraud into someone's organization can have a big impact on the bottom line pretty quickly. So the combination of us being able to push really hard to say, let's get your freight out to all the places where great carriers are, but then you having the security of Highway saying like, hey, let me go verify that those carriers actually who are they say they are and they're appropriate for you, is what gets us so excited about the combination of better together here. Like to add anything, Brendan?
It's good. That's good. Yeah, I think on the origins of associated digital activity, Chris, to your question, you know, in Highway, we use that term digital activity or associated digital activity. And so I wonder if you are referring to that particular term we use. And hey, what we're attempting to do there, Chris, is present to you instances where we can observe that two different carrier accounts have been accessed from the same from the same location, right? Which oftentimes is you know, suspicious or should give you some pause, right? And so it would indicate that perhaps the same person is trying to manage two different MCs, which we all know can lead to a double brokering event. Chris, let me know if that answers your question though, or if you want to expand on that. I could keep going. Yeah, okay, you said yes. Good.
Perfect. We got one last question here from an anonymous attendee who's saying, Parade, we have smart lanes. And the Highway has a great amount of carrier data. Can we use these together to better target customers? So some context for folks. Smart lanes is the ability at Parade for you to say, hey, when I get freight that is on this lane, send it automatically to this carrier, right? Because that's a carrier that's either run this load for me in the past or likes this lane or has capacity for you on this lane. And today we get that data primarily from data we mine for you, historical data, et cetera. One of the things we're very excited about is the potential to take this partnership further and bring some of that data in from Parade. So if you're a mutual customer, one of the areas where we're looking to potentially expand this partnership in the future is bringing more of that data in from Highway exclusively for you to be able to use to better target your customers in Parade. Cool. That's pretty much it. Brendan, do you want to wrap us up and we'll close up here, give people 1 or 2 minutes back. Anything you want to add to let them know?
No, what I would ask from folks who, if you've heard either Lindsay or I refer to terms or specific capabilities in Highway or Parade that you're unfamiliar with, please reach out to us. And we'd love to hop on and give you a demo or spend some time with you to better educate you on the investment you may have already made in one of those products. I know we're really excited about this and grateful for the folks who've come. Really, really good attendance here, guys. So thank y'all, especially on a Thursday afternoon. I don't think I have anything else to add, but please follow up with me if you have any questions. My email is just brennan@gohighway.com. So please reach out. Lindsay, thank you so much for hosting.
Awesome. Thank you much. Actually, you know what? We got one last question, so we'll sneak it in
Oh,
before.
there we good. Okay,
Yeah,
here it goes.
yeah. We got David asking. We use both Highway and Parade, and if a TMS integrates both separately, will this be an added subscription cost for something in the base? So from the Parade side, there is no additional charge for anything here. You have already purchased Parade. For you to integrate with Highway, there's no additional charge from the Parade side at all.
And same answer over here, David. Hopefully those are the answers you wanted.
Exactly. There's no additional charge. That's what everyone likes to hear. So perfect, folks. Let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate this. I hope you're realizing how you don't have to make that false trade-off between speed or trust anymore. With the combination of Highway and Parade lets you both grow your brokerage fast and do it safely and securely. So thank you so much for your time. We'll follow up with all of you. Take care.
Thanks all.